We're pleased to welcome Aaron Price and Stephen Altstadt into our studio with a preview of an event that's going to take place in Bainbridge this Sunday. Gentlemen, welcome to our program.
Good morning, Bob.
First, Aaron Price, tell us a little bit about yourself. Our listeners have heard you on the program a few times in the past, but give our listeners a little background. You've been involved in documentaries. We should say your mom has also been on the program, too, because she is the town supervisor for Windsor. So give us a little background.
Well, my mom does a great job as the supervisor of the town of Windsor. And one of the things I'm proudest of in this struggle for secession is the idea of serving others and improving the lives of not only people in cities like Binghamton, but in rural towns like Windsor, New York, and rural towns across upstate New York. You know, for too long, the needs of rural communities in upstate have been ignored. And it's easy to ignore rural communities because the people often aren't as media savvy as people in the city, and they often don't have the opportunity to get their voices heard. And I'm proud, as we move forward with secession, to be one of the people who's speaking up for them and doing great things for them. And you know, today here in the studio with me is Stephen Altstadt of Scope. And Scope is a big part of the secessionist movement, and there's a good reason he's part of the secessionist movement, because of what this state has done to the rights of gun owners. I'd really like today for Steve to address that topic, because personal freedom is a big part of secession.
And Steve, to start, give us a little background about SCOPE, the organization, how it came to be.
Sure. SCOPE is the Shooters Committee on Political Education. We're a nonprofit membership organization. We work for the rights of gun owners and sportsmen and to protect the Second Amendment. We've been working throughout New York State for 50 years. It's actually our 50th anniversary year, working for the Second Amendment rights of New York State citizens. You know, we've had to fight back gun control legislation and proposed laws mainly from downstate, from New York City area, for many years, but really has come to the head with the passage of this NY SAFE Act, which was passed in the middle of the night 2 years ago. And it does little, if anything, to address actual crime or violence with guns, and it mainly targets law-abiding citizens, and that's why we're so opposed to the SAFE Act.
Why do you think Governor Cuomo pulled that? Because even some people who support the general concept, or at least some of the ideas, weren't pleased with the way this happened, and here it is more than 2 years later. A lot of people throughout New York State are still unimpressed that the governor essentially rushed it through. This was some very important legislation, and a lot of people were not happy with the process that the governor used there. In fact, they're not happy with the process that Governor Cuomo uses when it comes to a lot of other legislation.
Well, what he said in his book, which didn't sell too well apparently, but that he had gone through quite a lot trying to get the gay marriage bill passed, and he didn't want to have to go through all that again. So this is a way he could do it without getting so much political resistance. In other words, you know, basically passing it in the middle of the night before anyone could raise any resistance against it.
So essentially, he lately, I mean, not just with the New York SAFE Act, but on a number of other issues, including, say, fast food minimum wage, or say about fracking. I mean, the governor essentially manages to force his will, that's the perception, on nearly 20 million New Yorkers, whether they like it or not. And sometimes he tries to be disingenuous, say with the fracking decision, and say essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but you know, don't look at me. It's basically up to the acting health commissioner and the DEC chief. I'm just here, watching what happens, and we know that's not the case.
Yeah, it all comes down to politics, and you know, the reaction to this law, not only the way that it was passed, but what's in the law. The sheriff's associations opposed to it. 52 counties have come out with resolutions opposed to it. Over 2 years later, and we finally got the numbers for the compliance with the registration requirements that was in the SAFE Act, and it was something like 4% of people complied with those registration requirements.
It was like pulling teeth to get those numbers, too.
Well, it was a lawsuit. Yeah, it took a act of the New York State Supreme Court to get the court order to get that released.
It's remarkable. Now, tell us what is going to take place this Sunday. Why people who are not happy with the status quo in New York are planning to get together in Bainbridge.
Well, one of the reasons people are getting together in Bainbridge, New York, this Sunday from 1 to 3 p.m. is for all of upstate New York to come together. You know, we have people coming to the rally from the Adirondacks, from Western New York, from Putnam County, and of course from this area. And we're coming together because together we have great strength, a greater strength than downstate has, because we have the truth on our side. You know, you brought up the issue of fracking. It's easier in New York State to get gay marriage than it is to get fracking. And I really think of this rally as a reverse Woodstock, as a celebration of traditional values, the values that built upstate New York. You know, you can walk a few blocks from this radio station and you can see, unfortunately, the decay of this once great city. And it's still a great city because we have great people here, but we can do a lot better. And secession is not only about politics, it's about economics, and it's about personal freedom. And I want everyone to come to General Clinton Park Sunday from 1 to 3 p.m. and hear the true voice of upstate New York, the voice that can't be silenced by intimidation or fear or just lack of access to media or other opportunities.
There are several speakers scheduled to participate. Have you managed to attract anybody who is a legislator or many public elected officials who will speak out and say, even if they don't necessarily support the specific secession movement, that they at least hear what your concerns are and essentially feel your pain? Will there be elected officials on hand?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. When the rally was being put together, we made a conscious decision not to invite politicians. Politicians are certainly welcome to come and listen and, you know, talk to people in the crowd. But no politician is going to stand on that platform and speak. Because as you all know, our politicians have failed this area. And it's time for the politicians of upstate New York, whether Republicans or Democrats, to take responsibility for the sorry state of upstate, and not to go along with the status quo, which allows one region of this state to dominate another. And you know what? Every year, every time there's an election, people go to vote, and so little changes. Secession is about changing the dynamics in upstate New York once and for all. So there's not going to be any politicians speaking. They haven't earned the right.
I think the momentum that's building for this rally and for the secession movement in general is indicative of how frustrated people are becoming in New York State. I don't think the divide between upstate and downstate has ever been greater. People are feeling that the government in Albany is not responsive to the wishes of people from upstate. It's pretty much controlled by the New York City area politicians, and so, as Aaron said, we made a conscious decision not to have politicians at this rally, that it will be leaders of various citizen organizations speaking.
Let me ask a hypothetical question. It's great. It's one of the best hypotheticals because it would never happen in a million years. But just say it happened, and Governor Cuomo, for whatever reason, decided, all right, somebody called my attention to this. I know there are a lot of people dissatisfied with the way things are going, including some people who really don't like me or my policies and my actions. If Governor Cuomo had the courage to show up in Bainbridge on Sunday afternoon, would he be allowed to speak?
Well, you know what? I will break the rule. Hey, if Governor Cuomo wants to come to the rally and speak, more power to him. He'll be welcome. But I am sure he'll get a lot of heckles and boos, and he'll hear a lot of things, which are the truth, from our speakers.
In fact, I'd like to issue him a personal invitation. If he'd like to come down to Bainbridge and speak to the people of upstate New York, I think that'd be a great thing.
And I think in some cases he has shown that he does possess courage under certain circumstances, and it would take courage, because it's true, probably close to 100% of the people who show up at the rally in Bainbridge this Sunday will not be fans. And yet, it would be, I think it would be an important, at a minimum, an important symbolic act for him to say, okay, I'm here. I know I'm going to hear boos, I'm going to hear heckles, might even hear some things that can't be broadcast on the radio because people are angry, and I'm willing to hear that. And then after people have gotten the opportunity to express themselves, take a few minutes to hear me and at least listen to what I have to say. And I bet he would be people after the initial, you have to get something out of your system, but I assume that the people in Bainbridge who come on Sunday would actually listen to him and hear. Maybe they wouldn't like what they heard, but at least it would be an important gesture. I don't expect it to happen, but I think that would be a huge thing if the leader of New York State showed up and went into the lion's den, even though it's not one of those crowds that's been sanitized.
Well, you know what? It's interesting. You brought up the idea of symbols. There always are a lot of symbolic gestures made to upstate New York. And because they're merely symbolic, nothing changes. If Governor Cuomo comes to the rally, I'm sure the audience actually will be polite, because he is, after all, the governor of our state. I'm sure everyone would sit there and listen to him speak and make promises. Governor Cuomo is a politician. Politicians make promises all the time. We're tired of promises in Binghamton, New York, in Windsor, New York, in Kirkwood, in Buffalo, in Syracuse, and Rochester, and in the Adirondacks. We're tired of politicians coming to our communities, looking around, promising to make it better. We want change now, and we're fed up with the status quo. And when the poster for the rally was designed, the head title of it was, "Let My People Go." I'm sure everyone listening is familiar with the book of Exodus. Pharaoh wouldn't let his people go. And I feel the same thing is true of Cuomo. He doesn't want things to change because he won't take the necessary steps for things to change. Governor Cuomo, come to the rally. But no matter what you say, you won't do anything to change our lives here in upstate New York.
That's Sunday in Bainbridge.
Sunday in Bainbridge.
Stephen Alstad, Aaron Price, my thanks to each of you for being with us.